Okay, it was just cloudy and then it started sprinkling a bit. Fortunately, I flew the drone a little bit beforehand. And with that in mind, what did I read today? How about this first one? It might actually be an interlinking story when you think about it. As you know, in places like the US, they're thinking of banning all Chinese-made drones like DJI, for example. And the argument would be if you do that, then it will put a lot of businesses and organizations in jeopardy. They have to scramble, for example, to find new hardware, or at the same time, they have to buy hardware that's not as good. But how about this perspective at first, where they're saying it's kind of necessary? This one here says, Chinese drone ban is necessary despite the pain. So first they talk about how in the US they've changed various regulations to enable drone flights to be conducted without so much red tape and procedures, but then at the same time, the biggest change they're saying is probably going to be the ban of, again, like the Chinese-made drones, saying, but the biggest and most disruptive change will come from a ban on sales of Chinese drones that's scheduled to take effect December 23rd. The ban on popular drones made by Shenzhen Dajiang Innovations, better known as DJI, and Altel Robotics will be painful for US consumers and businesses that use them. The move is necessary, though, to end the dependence on Chinese manufacturers and nurture American suppliers. There is no way to sugarcoat that US-made drones are more expensive and often don't match the capabilities of these Chinese uncrewed aerial vehicles or UAVs. That's because makers of Chinese drones, particularly DJI, snuffed out most potential competition more than a decade ago and have dominated the US market, accounting for 70% of the commercial sales and 90% on consumer purchases. This didn't happen by accident. Drones were included in the Made in China 2025 plan that the Chinese government initiated in 2015 to shower favored industries with the subsidies and access to capital. And then they talk about how a lot of agencies were warning about it and so forth. And then with the recent Countering CCP Drones Act that was authorized by the previous president in the US, it just seems like it's inevitable that they will be banned overall. The date was interesting too, because on December 23rd, that's only like, 2 days before Christmas. Can you imagine all those people that got, let's just say, DJI drones as a present in the US, where they may not be able to, let's just say, quote, legally use it in the near future? That would be one huge, loss of investment. But then that got me to think, because I read this news where apparently DJI is trying to expand into other industries, specifically this one with 3D printing. You know, they've been expanding into other areas too, like robot vacuums, for example. Well, this one says DJI becomes shareholder in consumer 3D printer maker Elegoo. Shenzhen Jinpai Technologies, the parent company of consumer 3D printing brand Elegoo, added DJI and Hongzhuang Jiangnan Technology as a new shareholders following a business registration update on November 18th. The firm now has registered the capital of US $895,000. Jinpai, founded in 2015, develops and sells consumer 3D printers, laser engravers, and STEM kits under the Elegoo brand. DJI previously told a Chinese tech media outlet that its investment in consumer-grade 3D printing reflects the development and growth potential. It sees the sector and aligns with its long-term focus on innovation. So what that got me to think is, with all that talk about bans and so forth in the US, do they see the writing on the wall overall? Will they lose a huge market? And that might actually happen in other parts of the world, because actually they are kind of banned in places like India too. So that actually might be a thing in the rest of the world, where people will say it's a security issues. You can only buy drones made locally, for example, or within the country. So maybe they, again, see the writing on the wall and are expanding rapidly. I guess it'll only be a matter of time too in places like the US if they just ban all, let's just say, foreign companies and drones and so forth. All those companies will grow, as they say, because no one really has much of a choice, right? Like, you have to buy something that's made within the US and so forth. Would a consumer actually care ultimately if they eventually get a product that's just as good or cost effective? I would imagine no. I mean, most people don't really care when they go shopping. They just want something that's priced right and that works. I think that's the bottom line for most people anyways. Although with crazy things in the air, how about this one? There were so many videos going around online of a fighter jet that apparently crashed. It says here in the story, India fighter jet crashes during a demonstration flight at Dubai Airshow, killing the pilot. An Indian fighter jet crashed Friday at the start of a demonstration flight in front of a crowd of spectators at the Dubai Airshow, killing its sole pilot. The Indian Hull Tejas smashed into the ground at the Vas Al Maktoum International Airport in Dubai World Central, sending a vast fireball into the air and a thick black smoke into the sky. Police vehicles, ambulance, and helicopters rushed to the site of the crash, spraying firefighting foam to extinguish the blaze. And you can imagine there's so many people that witnessed it, and he unfortunately did pass away, and people were saying instead of actually ejecting from the aircraft, he tried, I guess, his best to actually try to maintain control and to land it, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. It makes you wonder what happened in this case, huh? And with other crazy news, I read something more close to home, I guess. How about this one, where you're taking out, I suppose, students for some kind of trip, for example, and then a bear comes and attacks them. This one here says, students flee as Grizzly attacks elementary class in Bella Coola, injuring 11, some critically. Can you imagine that? A little too close to nature. It says, a grizzly bear has attacked a group of elementary school students and teachers in BC's Central Coast community of Bella Coola, leaving 2 people critically injured and 2 others seriously hurt. BC Emergency Health Services said 7 more people were treated at the scene of the attack in the community about 700 kilometers northwest of Vancouver, which was called in just before 2 p.m. on Thursday. Veronica Schooner said her 10-year-old son, Alvarez, was in the 4 to 5 class that was attacked while on a walk and was so close to the animal he even felt its fur. He was running for his life, she said. Schooner said a lot of people tried to halt the attack, but one male teacher got the whole brunt of it and was among the people taken by helicopter from the scene. And apparently the bear is still on the loose and people were telling residents to actually stay indoors. Wow, nature creating a havoc there, huh? I was reading they actually tried to fend off the bear, but with whatever they had, it didn't work. For example, bear sprays and so forth. That actually generated topics, funny enough, while people were saying the teachers should have been armed, I guess, more prepared for big animals like that. I've yet to see an actual bear just randomly walking around the public. The only ones I've seen is the one in Grouse Mountain, and they're in captivity. See you guys later.